Welcome, impactful parents. Today, we're going to talk about the hidden toxins all around us and how families can live a more toxic-free lifestyle. Hello, my name is Kristina Campos. I'm founder of The Impactful Parent, and I help parents of school-age children turn their chaos into connection with their adolescent. I offer free parent education videos every week, online courses, and coaching. And if that wasn't enough, I bring experts in other fields onto the Impactful Parent stage to teach you even more. And today I have a special guest. Her name is Dr. Jenna Hua. And Jenna is founder of a company called Million Marker. It's a company that empowers people to detox environmental toxins out of their lives and educates the public on harmful chemicals from plastics and everyday products that affect our health. I'm really excited to have Jenna on today. This is an amazing episode you do not want to miss. Thank you for being here, Jenna.
Thank you so much, Kristina, for having me and all the impactful work that you're doing.
Well, thank you. And I want to start off with, okay, so where are these toxins that you're talking about?
So they're actually everywhere. This is the point that we don't want people to get overwhelmed, but they are everywhere. So you think about toxins, it could be coming from the air you breathe, the food you eat, the products you use. They're pretty much all around us. And there are actually over like 80,000 chemicals in use today, industrial chemicals in use today. And we actually only have about 1% of them have sufficient safety data. So there are just like a lot of them out there. And I think it's important for people to be aware and to avoid. The key is that these toxins, these chemicals have no business of being in our bodies. They only do harm, they don't do any good. So it's always good to reduce.
Can you tell me what are the top harmful chemicals that parents need to pay attention to so that we know exactly where those are at and what they are?
So there are like several classes of these chemicals. If you think, you can think about the sources of them. So one people probably have heard about is heavy metal, right? We know about arsenic. Arsenic a lot of time is in rice. They're actually sometimes they're naturally occurring. So you want to make sure that you wash your rice, making sure you wash it multiple times. And then that usually will decrease the arsenic content of the rice. And you think about heavy metal, you think about mercury, right? Mercury, oftentimes, if you consume a lot of fish, you need to know that, mercury usually accumulate in fatty fish. So always checking your local fisheries, notice, making sure like, okay, if the mercury level is high, then try not to consume as much. And if you're pregnant, if you're thinking about getting pregnant, that's even more important to making sure you don't have that exposure. Then another class is the pesticides. So pesticides occurs in fruits and vegetables. So always wash your vegetables. And if you can consume organic, always choose organic over inorganic. So that's another tip. Other things are in personal care product or house cleaning products. That's actually like a major one. And oftentimes we think about products as always safe, but it's actually not safe. So in the product, there are 3 kind of chemicals that's pretty significant. People probably have heard about BPA. So you can see like a lot of labels saying like BPA free, and such labels, like they usually are like kind of like plastic chemicals. But BPA can also occur, like shows up on thermal receipts. So if you go to a gas station, go to a grocery market, you get a receipt, that ink and that coating of the receipt could have BPA on it. If you touch it, you will get exposed to it. That's actually a pretty significant. So we always tell people to, hey, avoid BPA exposure by not touching a receipt, getting your receipt emailed to you, or just don't touch it. If you absolutely have to touch it, make sure you wash your hands after. BPA also occurs in the lining of canned food, as well as canned drinks. So limit the consumption of canned food is always a good option. Besides BPA, there are now that, manufacturer labels like BPA free, but they have since BPA has been banned a few years ago, they have changed the formula to BPS and BPF, but they can literally change from BPA all the way to BPZ. So you name it. So it's just like very hard for policymakers to actually keep up with this kind of regulation. But because BPA often occur in plastics and also canned food or drinks, we tell people, hey, if you can avoid plastic like as much as possible. It's probably you can't avoid all of them because it's so intertwined in our lives. But if you can't avoid, avoid as much as possible. So BPA is one. Phthalates is another one. It's kind of a mouthful, but phthalates is also a plasticizer that makes plastic really flexible. BPA kind of makes a plastic like shatterproof. Phthalates makes the plastic flexible. They occur in like wraps, food packaging. They can also occur in personal care products. So anytime if your personal care product have perfume, fragrance labeled in the ingredient label, oftentimes you'll have phthalates in it because phthalates will make the actual fragrance stick onto your body much longer. The couple other ones is parabens is another one. We might have seen paraben label. Parabens are used as preservatives in personal care products. That's also like a hormone disrupting chemical. So all these chemicals that I just talked about, they are called hormone disrupting chemicals. We can go into that a little bit later, like why it's like called hormone disrupting chemical, because they mess with your hormones. And if you think about your hormones, it's like really, really important in your body because it regulates so many other functions. And then the last class is called benzophenol. That's the chemical that usually used in sunblock. That's also the chemical that kills the coral reef. So that's also a hormone disrupting chemical. So when you buy your sunblock, making sure you buy a sunblock without oxybenzone or benzophenol. Look for these kind of like benzophenol free, oxybenzone free. So you can have, a better product and then not getting exposed to these hormone disrupting chemicals.
Wow, that is so much information and really eye-opening. I'm kind of speechless about all the things that you just said and know how I know they are everywhere in our lives as you're talking about it, and very concerning as a parent. One of the questions I have for you is about the fruits and vegetables that you were mentioning, and you said to make sure that if you can buy organic. My question on that is, I'm assuming that it's on the outside of the fruit or vegetable, and is that a correct assumption? Because I was told years ago that I should buy organic if you eat the skin of something, for example, like an apple, but it may not necessarily be quite as important to buy organic for something like a banana, where I would peel the skin off and eat what's inside. But is that hold true with what you're saying?
That's a good rule to start. However, when sometimes pesticides were sprayed onto the fruit and vegetable when they're like even as seeds. So you will have chemical contamination within the fruit itself, within the vegetable itself. So that's why like we say, regardless if it's like have a skin or without skin, if you can consume organic, always consume organic. However, if you have to choose, if you have a limitation in terms of resources, if you have to choose, then obviously exactly as you said, because if the fruit have skin, a lot of the stuff is absorbed on the skin. If you can peel the skin off, then you can reduce the exposure. So if you have the resources, then please go everything organic. If you have limited resources, then yes, the ones with skin, then you don't have to worry as much. And then the one without skin, definitely go for organic. The two heavily polluted one fruit people love them is strawberries. So strawberries, whenever you buy strawberry, always go organic. Whenever you buy spinach, always go organic. These two are the most heavily contaminated fruits and veggies. So whenever you buy those two, please choose organic.
Oh, thank you for this great information. Now I'd like to know, what are some of the health impacts of these chemicals that apparently I've been exposing myself to for years?
So these chemicals, we call them hormone disrupting chemicals because, as I mentioned before, they mess with your hormones. And if you think about your hormone, if we take a step back, like a hormone is like, it pretty much controls everything in your body. And then they work kind of like, an orchestra, like a symphony, like each part is connected to another, and they work kind of like a lock and key. Everything is, matched. And then your hormone system actually like controls like every part of your body, every bodily function. And oftentimes people don't think about, your sleep is actually controlled by your hormone, like your fertility, obviously controlled by your hormone, and your metabolism and your mood. So all of these things are controlled by your hormone. So if your hormone goes imbalance, you would feel it. And then at the same time, if you're actually going through puberty, for example, parents with kids going through puberty, that's the time when their hormone is shifting so much. And if you have if you have exposure to these chemicals when it messes with your hormone, that could have much longer impact. So when we say like developmental timing really matters, so the earlier you get exposed to of these chemicals, then the potential detrimental impact you could have. And if you talk about like these chemicals, they kind of have different kind of functions, and BPA kind of like mimics estrogen. So if you have a lot of BPA exposure, it's kind of like you have extra estrogen exposure. Phthalates blocks testosterone. So if you have a lot of phthalates exposure, study have shown that if you have higher phthalate exposure, it would impact, say, male baby a lot more. They could have other detrimental decreased sperm count and other like male fertility related issues. Exposure to all of these chemicals, also these hormone disrupting chemical as a class have been also linked to conditions like ADHD and also kids' IQ when they're much older. So it's like really, really important for parents to become aware that these chemicals exist and then trying to reduce exposure as much as possible.
Extremely important for parents to know this. I am very grateful for having you on today. So that brings me to, what can parents do to live a more toxic-free lifestyle, knowing this new information?
A few things, like, first thing is, please don't get too overwhelmed, because you can literally take like small, simple steps to eliminate your exposures. First of all, is definitely avoid plastics as much as possible. And also, not all plastics are created equal. So one thing to identify better plastic versus like horrible plastic is by looking at the recycling sign on the bottom of the plastic packaging and the plastic cups or Tupperwares and whatnot. So plastics are usually labeled like a 1 to 7. So usually 1 to 5 are better plastics. So 1 to 5 is also what you can actually recycle. So other numbers like 3, 4, 6, 7, those are bad. Like, so if you are using any of the like 3, 4, 6, 7 plastic, please get rid of them. Like, all of them are contaminated with these harmful chemicals.
And I got a question for you about that. Is those numbers located on the bottles, right?
Yes.
Isn't that inside the little triangle
Yes,
of
yes.
recycling? Okay, I just want
Yes.
to clarify. That's where parents would look.
Yes, yes. The little triangle on the bottom, whenever you see that recycling symbol. So 1 to 5 are okay. They're better plastic. You should avoid all of them, period. But if you have to use them, 1 to 5 are generally okay. But definitely avoid 3, 4, 6, 7.
Thank you.
Avoiding plastic is definitely number one. So use a stainless steel cup to drink or glass to drink. And the same thing goes with your food, right? Like, store food in glass or stainless steel. One issue with stainless steel is trying not to store acidic food in stainless steel, same as using, cast iron pans. So if you cook acidic food in cast iron or store acidic food in stainless steel, they might leach out heavy metal. So, which is not good. Leach out metals, and so you want to avoid that. But glass is always a good one.
And so I want to ask you then, give me an example of acidic foods so that we know exactly what you're talking about.
Lemon, tomato. So tomato is a big one. So whenever you taste sour, particularly tomatoes, so try not to store those in like stainless steel or metal containers. Use glass. Another a good option, because when parents have kids, if you throw glass around, it could break. So another good, pretty decent option is silicone, but not all silicones are created equal. So choose medical grade, food grade silicone, or sometimes it's called platinum based silicone. Those silicones are better. We actually at Million Marker, we have curated a list of a good product on our website, so people can check it out. That ranges from personal care product to storage containers. So people can check it out. Those are vetted by us that they're toxic free. Another really good tip when it comes to cooking and food is if you can choose a beeswax wrap rather than the string typical plastic wrap, and never microwave plastic. So when we have food in a Tupperware, now we put in the microwave, we just microwave it. So the heat from the microwave will actually increase the release of these chemicals from plastic. So never microwave plastic. So that's like plastic number one. Second is please read your product labels. Completely avoid fragrance or perfume on the ingredient label. So whenever you see that now, like manufacturers, now that sometimes they will say fragrance free, they will say perfume free, but now they have changed some of the wording by labeling as aroma. But it's pretty deceiving. So make sure like when you read your label, avoid fragrance, avoid perfume, and avoid aroma. And sometimes product will label as, like unscented, but unscented is actually a scent. So that doesn't mean it's like without these things. So like choose like fragrance free is always a good option. So yeah, definitely read your labels. And we also provided our toxic free guide. So if you check out the PDF in the toxic free guide, we also have like part 1, 2, 3 about labeling. So there are different labels, making sure different certification labels. That would be helpful for parents to identify what's a good product or what's not a good product. So check that out. And then because a lot of these chemicals are also occur in food, like packaged food, also in restaurant, whenever they use packaged food or they don't use good enough equipment. So trying to eat in as much as possible. Eating obviously increase your time with your family, increase bonding time, and avoid toxic chemical at the same time. So eating as much as possible home cooked meal is always the best. And two other tips. One is purify your water. People might have heard, I didn't mention about another class of chemical. It's called PFAS. We call it forever chemical. That has been in the news quite a bit. Those are also occurring like Teflon pans, like non-stick pans. So, they also can also occur in water. So purify your water, and you can always choose a water filter. So the reverse osmosis water filter is a really good option because it filters out a lot of stuff. We also have a curated water filter list on our website. What you need to look for is NSF certified. NSF is a third-party lab testing agency that they actually like making sure that the water filter is supposed to be doing what they're supposed to be doing. So check for those signs. And then the lastly is, be a mindful shopper, right? Like don't touch receipts and always have it email it to you, and then read product ingredient labels. And also, ultimately these responsibilities shouldn't be on the consumer, shouldn't be on the parents. Like the manufacturer should, like whenever a product is put out, it should be their responsibility, right? But at the moment, we don't have that luxury. We don't have that product. So I think parents and everybody voting with your own dollars is also a good sign to push policymakers, making sure, hey, in the future, that when we put out a product, this product is safe for everybody, that we don't have to do all these checks. Nobody needs to be a chemist, to read these things.
Wow, so much information. Again, I know that our audience is going to have to be rewinding and watching this over and over again. And I hope that they do. And not only do I hope that they do that, but I hope that they forward this on to so many other families to get this word out so we can start living these toxic-free lifestyles. So one last time, can you just reiterate maybe the top 5 things that we can do starting today just to start detoxifying so that we could be healthier?
Absolutely. First, avoid plastic. Avoid plastic as much as possible. Avoid plastic containers, drink containers, both food and drink containers. Second is avoid fragrance, avoid perfume, avoid anything labeled aroma, go fragrance free. Don't even think about unscented, go fragrance free. Third is eating as much as possible, spending time with your family, less packaged food, less takeout. 4, purify your water. If you can choose a reverse osmosis water filter, that's great. It will filter out all these toxic chemicals. Lastly is be a mindful shopper. Get your receipt, email it to you, and don't touch it. And also read product ingredient labels.
So tell me a little bit more about what you do with your business, Million Marker.
Yeah, at Million Marker, we're trying to provide a test kit allowing people to understand their toxic chemical exposures. So, and then also offer people actionable feedback, exactly what they can change, because you can't possibly test for every single product. So by testing yourself, you actually understand what your own exposures are and then understand where your sources are coming from. So our test kit, pretty much people can buy a test kit online. They would do an exposure journal before they send us their urine sample. It's a urine test kit. So once you send us your urine sample, we screens for 13 chemicals that I just mentioned about all of those classes of chemicals. And by looking at your exposure and your exposure journal, like where your exposures are coming from, we let you know what are the sources of your exposure and how you can eliminate them. And then you can, take a test, the second test, to confirm that your exposure have been eliminated and you have a low exposure.
That is fantastic. And how long does it take to get results back?
So usually 2 weeks. So once you send us your sample, it'll take us 2 weeks for the lab analysis and then to give you this actionable report. And in the report, you will also find, your levels, how you compare with our existing users, how you compare with the national average, and exactly what you can do. You will also find a whole section on product audits. So we actually audit all your products, not just the chemicals that we test, but also any problematic ingredients that in your product we pointed out to let you know, hey, next time you buy a new product, not buy this one, pay attention on this ingredient, and then buy a better one.
What an amazing resource that could be for anybody, for all families. And who can take this test? What's like the youngest age?
Pretty much everybody. If with the parents' consent, you can definitely test your kids. But we definitely encourage, particularly parents are thinking about a second kid or a third kid during preconception stage. We definitely recommend parents to do that, because we think that's actually you get the best bang for your buck, because that's the earliest time that when your kid is conceived. That's a really important timing. And then other timing, it'll be obviously whenever the kid is like rapidly developing during puberty. Because these chemicals, because they impact hormones, so we also have users that going through menopause, because that's also the time that, when your hormone having a lot of shift, that's also the time that people start worrying about it and getting tested.
I know that people are going to want to know more and find out more and get some of those resources that you were talking about that are on your website. But I also know that you have a free resource for us today. So first, tell us, how can we get a hold of you? And then a little bit more about this free PDF that I heard that you're giving the audience.
Yes, people can find us on our website and also follow us on social. Our website is www.millionmarker.com. Check us out. And we published hubs of content trying to educate parents, educating all the average consumers about these toxic chemicals and what you can do about it. You can also follow us on social. We're pretty active on Instagram and Twitter. So Instagram, our handle is just million_marker. We often do product comparison. So we compare, product, kind of like stop, slow, and go. Because oftentimes some of the product, people might not find it to be user friendly if it's super clean, and sometimes they're kind of expensive. It might not fit your budget. So we have kind of 3 category. So we always think using, going for a slower brand versus a super clean, super expensive brand. That's always better than using just a brand that's full of toxic chemicals. So there's always choice for that. So we often do that. And then in the PDF, that it's a pretty long PDF. It's pretty a fat document that we put together. And then in that document, you can find about labeling. You can find how these chemicals will impact your fertility, impact your pregnancy. And, if you're planning to conceive, what are the top chemicals you need to avoid? And as a dad, for dad, what kind of like chemical you need to avoid, and to protect your kids, like, what are the chemicals you need to avoid. And we also goes into detail about, like silicone, like what kind of silicone packaging is good. And if you're wondering about, how we do our auditing process, selecting good chemical, good products, we also have that in the guide. We also have a few things around like health optimization, on your gut health, and then how does these chemical could impact your gut bacteria. So yes, check it out.
That is so wonderful. I am so excited for the audience to get this free PDF. You're going to be able to find that at theimpactfulparent.com/toxic free. And we'll make sure that we leave all the links down below. And if you would like to become a more impactful parent, please check out all that my website has to offer. Also, I have parenting courses, family coaching, 30-day challenges, and lots of free resources for parents of school-age children. But until next time, you got this, parents. We're just here to help.